How many of us have heard this term, mother promise? Have you grown up hearing those words when we were small? You were? Or no? I'm from South India, so I asked a North Indian friend of mine, have you played this saying? Yes. They said, yeah, we say maa ki kasam all the time. And then I asked, okay, what does that mean? They said, when we say something, we vouch for that. That's a surety. So we add on by saying, mother promise. We are saying that is right. Yeah. You heard of God's promise, God promise, and mother promise. So I was a little more intrigued. So I asked, do you by any chance say father promise? They said, yeah, occasionally, Baap ki kasam we have said, but that doesn't hold any weight. If you have to joke ourselves, we say father promise. Otherwise, we only say what is called mother promise. What does it say to us? I also asked a person who has finished 10th standard and above. I just wanted to know if this is an older generation term or is this also a term that is being used. And so I was asking them, hey, have you use this term? Do you use this term mother promise? And to my surprise, they said, yes, we also use the term mother promise. So I was a little more intrigued. So I asked somebody who was 10th standard and below, in a rather newer generation. I asked, how about you? Do you use this term mother promise? For them, this term was relatively new. He said, we only tell ourselves, what's up, bro? We call our mom bro, we call our father bro, and all of them are bro. Nevertheless, mother promise is mother promise. Or the word mother automatically adds itself to saying, hey, you know what? If he says something, that is a surety. That is as true as it can be. And that's a lot that talks about when we say about mother, isn't it? I looked for a poem to describe about mother. And I edited these lines from a couple of poems and put together these words, which aptly, I believe, describe what this great person is all to our lives. To be a mother is to pour yourself out, to forego slumber and restful sleep. So attuned you are to cries in the night, offering the comfort of your very presence with quiet assurances, hey, I'm here. To be a mother is to weep over the fights, the silence, the wounds your children so often give one another. To yearn for peace, for reconciliation, for love that runs deeper than offense. And when the dust of conflict settles, to gather each soul, the offender and the offended, into the wide fold of your embrace, whispering gently into their hearts, you are still beloved. To be a mother is to be an artist, a keeper of memories long past, a weaver of stories yet untold, a visionary of lives yet to unfold. For love like hers breaks every wall. A mother's love unites us all. Isn't that a beautiful testimony? And I think all of us probably can think of some terms and from there and relate to our own mothers, friends. Today is a day filled with joy, gratitude and deep love because it is Mother's Day. And we are here to celebrate something bigger than biology. We are here to celebrate the gift of family, the power of nurturing love, and the calling that God places in all of us to care for one another. Today we honor the women who carried children in their wombs, the women who carried children in their hearts, those who have mothered through adoption, through mentoring or spiritual care, and those even without biological children have left a lasting legacy of love and kindness in each of our lives. Haven't we all felt that way through someone's influence of love and kindness when we needed? All of those who extended that kind of a selfless love on our life are the caring mothers of our lives. And so today, we honor all of them. We celebrate mothers, yes, but we celebrate family. Those caregivers, it could be fathers, it could be grandparents, it could be the children, it could be uncles, neighbors, teachers, friends. We celebrate family. Anyone who has loved, nurtured, protected, and sacrificed for the sake of another. I know at City Harvest, we welcome the young and the old, the married and the single, the joyful and the grieving, those who celebrate with full hearts and those who carry quiet sadness or longing today. Please realize, friends, as City Harvest, we want to tell you that all of us are seen. All of us are loved. All of us are part of God's beautiful, redemptive family story. So, we laugh together, we remember together, and we worship together the family that the Lord has given to us. And family in all of its forms is God's idea. And that's why we can celebrate each other. Even if our parents, our families, our moms are here or not, we can always celebrate because there has always been someone who has been instrumental for being you. And that's very true. We are a sum of those people who had given their selfless love so that we are today here the way we are. And that's why, friends, all of us, remember, we have all had influences in life. Some way or the other, they've always been a part of us. You see, it's part of our human nature to sometimes take certain things for granted. And often the ones we take for granted sometimes are right at home. At work, in public, we tend to be careful. We watch our words, we guard our tone, we put efforts into how we relate. But sometimes with family, with our spouses, with our children, with our parents, with our siblings, we grow too familiar. We relax. We let things slide. And without meaning to, sometimes we drift away. And that's why I wanted to talk a little about how do we work this out even if we have a smaller gap. We are called as a family to be close. But sometimes within the family, we drift apart and we become distant. As close as we become, sometimes those closeness become cold. And as it becomes cold, it also drifts away and it becomes a distance. And that's why this morning I wanted to speak about how do we strengthen our family from distance to closeness. How do we bring that together? Friends, through grace, through forgiveness, and through intentional love, we can rebuild what's been lost. God's not only the maker of families, but He's also the redeemer of families. He's also the restorer of families. So we're going to talk about the distance in our closeness, the subtle, silent space that can form among those we love most. And more importantly, we're going to talk about how each of us can play a role to bring that distance back to closeness. Of course, how can I leave that when we are talking about family and leave out mothers? And that's why I'm talking about mothers who are bridges of grace in our life. Especially as we talk about family, let's honor where it is due. And that's our mothers. Many families, we have to recognize that pivotal person who often holds everything together is your mother. Her presence is foundational, her love unwavering, and her influence far-reaching. So today as we honor mothers, we reflect on the vital role they play in nurturing, uniting, and strengthening the family. Exodus 20, we all know that. When God made the 10 commandments, or when He put things together and then He said, this is the top 10 list that we have for the entire generations to come on this family. Imagine, God who is the creator puts down 10 points and says, everybody has to follow these 10 points, the 10 commandments, the 10 list. And then among the top 10 list that the Lord has given, first promise that the Lord gives along in the 10 list is, honor your father and mother. So obviously it's important. Mothers play a huge role and the Lord expects us to honor mothers and fathers. Then there will be a long life in our life, friends. It's a true story. I once heard a story about a young man who became very successful in his career. A CEO before 35. At his award ceremony, he honored his mother in tears. He shared how as a boy, he noticed his mom's hands was rough and scarred. He used to feel very embarrassed among his friends. One day he asked his mother, "Mom, why are your hands so ugly?" She knelt down and said, "These hands are like this because I scrubbed floors, I cleaned houses, and I picked crops so you could have an education and you could have a future." That day that boy realized those scars were the scars of love. Friends, mothers wear silent medals, scars, tired eyes, sleepless nights, all evidences of deep, selfless love. So let's just take a moment right now. Think about our own mothers. And I know for some of you, moms wouldn't have been that mom that I'm talking about. But we would have had others in our lives who have shown us the same kind of selfless love. Those who put their needs before your own needs. Those who saw something in you even when you did not see it in yourself. We are who we are today, not just because of what you have done or what I have done. There have been multitude number of people that the Lord has brought in his own way so that we are taken care of, so that we are attended to. And maybe they are all the mothers that has been in your life. Proverbs 31, 25 to 28. Beautiful verses. Think of your mother. Think of the person who cared for you as we look at this verse. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Mothers are not just support systems. For many of us, they have been the pillars, that spiritual anchor that has held our family together. So mothers, hats off to you. Hence, when we speak about family, mothers are often described as the bridges of grace for the family, providing essential support and guidance that shapes the lives of the children and overall well-being of the family unit. They play a multifaceted role. Think of them. Completely a multifaceted role. From morning till evening, there are so many things that they do around us. We take it for granted, but they end up doing it without expecting anything in return. So friends, maybe now or before evening, or if my message is getting bored or you want a distraction from your closing eyes, and if your mom or someone who took the role of your mom in your life is on a WhatsApp, maybe send them a quick appreciative message to say thank you for all that you did. I'm sure our pastor will forgive you just because you're taking that mobile for that now. But remember, today we are talking about family. Family as a treasure of relationships. Remember friends, family is not an accident. It is the first institution that God created. Genesis chapter 2 verse 18. We all know this verse. It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make a helper fit for him. God did not create a church first. God did not create a government first. God created a family. And that's why that plays a pivotal role. Let's celebrate one of God's most beautiful and precious gifts. Family. A treasure of relationship. The way that God has designed family, it is not an afterthought, but as the first and foundational relationship on earth. Genesis 2:18, God saw Adam and said, it is not good for the man to be alone. So he created Eve and brought them together, not just to keep each other company, but build a bond of love. Build a bond of unity, build a bond of fellowship, and through it learn how important it is to understand the triune head, how they could be united and how they could be in a relationship. You also be in a relationship so that you know the nuances of how you could enjoy heaven on earth. Friends, it's a beautiful masterpiece of connection. That is where we could feel love. Even as our Pastor Glory said, that is the first place where love can be first felt. values are formed, where faith is passed on from generation to generation. We all live in a world that shifts and changes. Family is the one that remains a constant source of identity, a strength and belonging. It is in the warmth of a family that we experience acceptance, that we experience encouragement, and that we experience unconditional love. One beautiful example of this, and we all know that, Ruth and Naomi. Both of their husbands passes away. And they are in such a critical situation where they wanted to move on their own. And we all know this verse. See what beautifully Ruth says. Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. And your God, my God. What a beautiful verse, isn't it? Such a bond of relationship that has grown very thick that they didn't want to part their ways. And history changed, and we all know how it changed. That's the power of family, where loyalty, love, and faith brings new life and new hope. So every member in the family that God has given you is a treasure. Spouses are gifts to one another. Companions, supporters, and friends. Parents are nurturers and leaders who transfer wisdom and knowledge when we need the most. Children bring joy, laughter, and fresh hope into your home. Extended families enriches this design. Every relationship is a thread of God's love that God has kept as a stamp for your life and for my life, friends. Hence, very important for us to treasure our families. So let's speak words of life, build memories, and walk in love. In the embrace of family, God constantly tells us, you and I are never alone. We are always with people who are there to show God's love through each other. So, when we invite God into our homes, His presence strengthens every relationship. I heard of the story that tells about the value of what we do. In a small coastal town, there was a family that operated the town's only lighthouse. Every night the family would take shifts, mom, dad, and the older siblings, making sure that the light stayed bright. Storms came, waves crashed, but they stayed faithful. They understood if the light went out, ships would crash and lives would be lost. Friends, your family and my family are like white lighthouses. When families shine with love, with faith, with truth, they guide generations safely. When families fail, often whole communities suffer. So let's remember, our family is about relationship, not just blood ties. Somebody said, DNA makes relatives, love makes family. Colossians chapter 3, 13 to 14. We have been often hearing this verse right from this pulpit itself. Bear with each other and forgive one another, and over all these virtues, put on L-O-V-E, love, which binds all of us together in perfect unity. So friends, relationships are a treasure that the Lord has given to us, and our family is that treasure box that we need to nourish and cherish. However storms come or waves come, it's very important for us to hold on to that family as a sacred, treasured possession. But you would realize, and by now, that when families do go through silent battles, there are behind those closed doors, there are so many difficulties that come in a way. We live in a time when God designed family, but it is challenged in many fronts. Cultural shifts, busy lifestyles, digital distractions have led to emotional disconnection. Having said that, we have to remember that Christians or non-Christians, this can easily hit us. There could be financial struggles, there could be miscommunication, there could be generational gaps, or even competing values that could hit us. However close we are with Christ, when we take sometimes our families for granted, these are some things that are bound to hit us, hit our families like a storm that hits the shore. As counselors, we have seen these wounds firsthand. Strong families with a simple misunderstanding can go a long distance away. pastors, I'm sure, and church leaders, you would have realized that even among Christians, the so-called strong family members with strong ethos and strong families, sometimes when we take it for granted, a small miscommunication or a small misunderstanding could easily erode that relationship. And sometimes if we don't attend to that, tomorrow is a little more distant than today. Our closeness can become cold in our own life. And you know what? The enemy is aware that family is the foundation of society. And if he needs to strategically touch you, he will touch your children. If he has to touch me, he will touch my children. And that is the way it is. Remember the book of Job? How he could easily come and swirl around and shake your firm foundation because he knows exactly what he is doing. When families are weakened, friends, children lose guidance, marriages lose intimacy, and society loses stability. A divided home can leave individuals feeling isolated and unloved. It could move the mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being out of your home and out of my home. If the enemy can break the family, he can hinder the development and strength of your own family. So friends, we need to be careful. We need to be watching out for what is to come and day by day nourish and cherish the relationship that the Lord has given to us. It could be pastors in your own home. It could be worship leaders. It could be the so-called strong people in faith. Yet, problems can come in our family. You know why? Because we are broken people and we live among broken people. And because of that, there could be issues in life. Our house could be beautiful, but it could have a cracked foundation. And it's important that we understand that these are things to come, and Bible doesn't close that. The first family had what? A murder. You remember that? Genesis chapter 4, Cain killed Abel. Right there. Talk about family dysfunction, it is there. Even among the strength and the strong families, there are things bound to come. That's why in John chapter 16, John says, in this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. That's why there are two major parts of this message that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about how from closeness we could become cold in our relationship. The distance caused by unhealthy family patterns. And then later on, I'm going to talk about how we could bring in all together and move the distance out and come back to closeness. From closeness to coldness, the distance caused by unhealthy family patterns. As I said, families are a precious gift of God. But we are imperfect people. Conflict is inevitable. Conflict is not the problem. Is that a problem? Do we in our families have conflict? No? We don't have conflict at all? A conflict is not the problem. How do we handle conflict is the problem. Conflict helps us grow. Conflict helps us to understand each other better. Your spouses are not your photocopy. By now we know our family members, even if you have 2 or 3 children, you would realize from where do they come from? Okay? They think differently, they act differently, they respond differently. They are not the same. And if they are not the same, misunderstandings will come. Conflicts could come. But then the challenge is, how do we handle conflicts? I'm going to talk about 5 wrong responses to family conflicts. And then I'm going to see how we could address them. How this family conflicts, if we are not handling it well, it could cause a deep pain instead of a deep healing in our lives. And as I talk about these 5 points, I'm also going to conclude that with 3 questions that I'm going to leave with you. If you think you could identify any of those questions, our prayer is that the Lord would continue to walk with you on those questions and see through the day, through the week, how you could or I could handle those questions and see if this is something that we unknowingly do it within our own family. Maybe the Lord is telling us, find an answer to those questions. Avoidance. If I ignore it, maybe it will disappear. One of the wrong pattern of how we handle family issues or conflicts is if I avoid it, maybe it will disappear. Avoidance happens when we sweep problems under the rug, thinking silence is safer than dealing with conflict. But avoiding hard conversations, friends, it builds a lot of invisible walls. Over time, tension increases, intimacy fades, and misunderstandings grow deeper. A family that avoids difficult discussions often finds itself emotionally disconnected. Avoidance may sound peaceful on the surface, but in reality, it delays healing and creates an atmosphere of tension. It's like putting a fish inside a bottle. How much of fish can a bottle hold? You add more fish, keeping yourself silent because you feel that you can hold it, but a time will come when that fish that's the last of it. And when it breaks, it brings in a lot of pain, friends. So, wanting peace at any cost, sometimes we avoid conflicts. But we have to understand that that is not the actual way to react to situations. Avoidance can cause emotional distance, misunderstanding, and a resentment to grow. Avoiding conflict is like leaving a wound untreated. If you leave a deep wound untreated, it could easily cause a lot of infection. And if you don't deal with that infection, at some point of time, it will show forth in the way it is. So I'm going to ask yourself 3 questions, or ask ourselves 3 questions. Is there an issue in my family we keep avoiding? Are there conversations I know need to happen, but I keep putting them off? Do we value peace so much that we have traded it for emotional distance? Any of these questions, if it rings a bell, maybe in the way we relate, or maybe in our own family, we feel that somebody does it this way, then remember, maybe it is time that we address that issue. What issue have I left unspoken that God is prompting me to handle that into the light with love? Avoidance. Second is explosion. When I'm angry, I cannot help it. Familiar? For some of us at least, when I'm angry, I cannot help it. Exploding in anger may feel like a release, but it can do a lasting harm. Often explosive reactions come from unhealed pain and deep frustration. A person was sitting there and talking and listening to anger and somebody preaching on anger. And then he said, it does not bother to me at all. Because you know what? I say it and then I'm clean. Everything inside is gone. And then you know what? I feel a peace in my life. But then that preacher looked at the person and said, yes, showed us a shotgun. You shoot it and then it is peace everywhere. But what went out makes a lot of damage in some people's life. That's the way it is, friends. When words end up going out of our mouth as we explode, it has power. It has done its impact in life. It does damage relationships. Hard words, yelling and emotional outbursts can create a lot of fear. Children will end up growing in fear because of how the father or the mother could explode in anger. James chapter 1 verse 19. What does it say? Be quick to listen, slow to speak and slow to become angry. And then the 20th verse, beautiful verse. Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. For many of us, we would carry emotional wounds because of some explosive person who have used explosive words that has damaged our relationship with that person. And for a family that the Lord is wanting us to grow close to each other, close-knit to each other, this can become such a powerful enemy. And that's why it's very important for us to see how do we handle anger. Proverbs 15 verse 1 says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stirs up anger. So 3 questions again for explosion. Do I or someone in my family often raise their voice instead of discussing calmly? Have my reactions left emotional scars in someone I love, especially within my family? Thirdly, have I ever justified hurtful words by blaming, saying, oh, I'm a short-tempered person, blaming my anger? Those are for our reflections. Who in your family or who in your own relationship are ending up showing those reactions? Is it true? So that we are helping them to lead for forgiveness and then teach them a gentler way. Avoidance, explosion. Thirdly, withdrawal. It's easier to pull away than to engage. It may look like silence, but it's often a silent cry or pain or resignation. Some people often retreat emotionally than want to engage themselves, feeling that however I do, no resolution is possible. So I better keep myself silent. But ongoing withdrawal, friends, it creates a lot of loneliness within you. You could be in the same home, in the same bed, but kilometers apart. It can lead a lot of loneliness. Children may feel abandoned. Spouses may feel rejected. And healing becomes a delayed commodity in all of our lives. It begins as a self-protection. But rather than it's shielding you, it will isolate you or it will isolate me. So emotional distance, it stifles a lot of communication and breeds misunderstanding. And over time, when we follow this, our relationship will slowly become a cold affair. It is almost going into a deep freezer with no emotions being shown to each other, because all of us live in our own world within the so-called nurturing family. So 3 questions again. Do I emotionally shut down after disagreements? Is there someone in my home who has grown distant and I have done little to bridge that gap of relationship? Thirdly, have I given up trying to restore a relationship because it feels too painful? No use talking to this person. So I close myself in such situation. It's a dangerous thing in our relationship. Avoidance, explosion, withdrawal. Fourth, gossip, and we don't do that at all in our church. So, I can just skip this part. Let me tell someone else what they did to me. Remember, it can turn family pain into public discussions. Sharing frustrations with outsiders instead of addressing them directly with the person involved not only breaks trust, but it also invites others to take sides, and that is not fair in the process of reconciliation. What may feel like a harmless release often become a breeding ground for resentment and misunderstanding. Friends, gossip can distort reality. It can add layers of confusion and bias that will certainly make reconciliation harder for families in the long run. It may offer momentary comfort, but then it is always alienating the other person because it breaks trust. What is shared in my house, if it is heard in the big market, that's a dangerous thing. Correct? We have to be cautious and careful. When pain is aired publicly, those involved often feel very betrayed. And when they feel betrayed, it becomes difficult for them to reinvent the trust again on you, because every time there is a little nudge behind your own brain that says, oh, can I trust this person on this? Or even this would be publicly aired and publicly told to somebody else just to get some brownie points. Friends, even in disagreements, we have to create a space where trust is not broken. So again, the 3 questions. Have I spoken negatively about a family member to someone who is not part of the solution? Do I find it easier to complain to others than to lovingly confront the person directly? Is my desire for sympathy greater than my desire for reconciliation? Finally, bitterness. I will never forget what they did to me. I will never forget what they did to me. Very deep words, quite but dangerous words. It begins with hurt and disappointment, often justified in the beginning, but if we leave it unchecked, it becomes a root that grows into deep resentment. Over time, it hardens the heart and poisons every interaction. Friends, bitter people often replay past wounds in their minds, allowing pain to shape their perceptions. What is inside is what will come out. And if our inside is filled with bitterness, the fruit that comes out would end up harming our relationships. And it could very well happen. One of our wrong pattern in dealing with conflicts is dealing with or working through this bitterness that we allow it to. It isolates, it creates walls instead of building bridges. It stops you from seeing the other person because I am filled with bitterness inside. It is like I want the other person to die, but I drink the poison. That's the way it is. We harm ourselves instead of solving the problem. So my 3 questions again. Am I holding on to pain from something said or done long ago? Is there someone in my family I find it difficult to speak kindly to or even pray for them? Do I assume they will never change, so I have stopped hoping or trying? Now, there have been a lot of questions that we have put forth in our own life and in my own life. If there is a question that nudges us close to the heart, and that's been our prayer today. Lord, Spirit of the Lord, work through the hearts of all of us, including me. And if there is a question that you are giving to us and nudging and saying, hey, this is something you need to work with, maybe use these days, the next few days, and go into the Lord's presence and say, Lord, I feel a little disturbed because of this question. Maybe a part of this question applies to me as well. And if that is the case, then please understand, friends, let's deal with it. Even before the sun goes down, let's find a way to address this issue. We can close our chapter and leave away, and I'm sure after 10 years, the Lord would probably tell back the same question to us, because the Lord wants us to move and grow as well and become like Christ, correct? So it's important that we find a way to choose some of these when the Lord nudges and see if there is something that the Lord was walking through our lives. My final point is from distance to closeness. How do I restore relationship God's way? And that's what the Lord has called all of us for. Remember, families is a treasure of relationships. The Lord has given us as families so that we could enjoy, have peace, have love, have joy, learn through the nuances of life. But sometimes the challenges of life takes us aloof, takes us away, takes us from enjoying the way the Lord has kept our family for. But we don't have to live that way. This is the only life we get in this part of the world. And this is the only family that the Lord has kept in this part of the world. So let's treasure the friends. Let's treasure the family. Let's treasure the relationship and see if this is the case, let me handle it better. If this is the case, let me find a solution so that I am able to build on what the Lord has given for you and build on what the Lord has given for me, from distance to closeness. Friends, every family, there would be unmet expectations. There would be past wounds. There would be a natural drift because of the busy life. And especially in a city that we live in, there is too much that everybody is asking for. And there would be a drift, and certainly and surely something that we end up sacrificing is our family, because we feel our family would understand. We feel that our spouse would understand. We feel that our brothers would understand. And then we become lethargic in the way we build relationship, because we want to be the so-called perfect in the outside world. Let's see 5 biblical principles that could bring us to closeness from the distance sometimes if we have in our relationships. Firstly, And we all know this. Build on Christ the rock. Let him be the firm foundation in our life. Every house needs a foundation. And to us as Christians and to us as people, foundation is the Christ. Matthew chapter 7, 24 to 25. Jesus says, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. What a beautiful truth for us, for our families, as we look at it. Storms are inevitable in any household. If I say, oh, my house doesn't have a conflict, man, you're already in heaven. It's inevitable. Financial stress, parenting challenges, personality clashes. It could be conflicts. It could be grief. It just round the corner. But families rooted in Christ are not easily shaken. They may be tested, but they will stand firm. Building on Christ means more than attending church together. It means modeling Christ. Modeling the love of Christ in our home, in the sacrifice that we do, as we are the first one to forgive, as we end up being patient, and as we show ourselves full of grace. All of these shows that we are rooted deep into the crevice of what the Lord is. Christ, the rock. When Christ is there, he becomes the guide that holds our family together. Secondly, prioritize family worship. Make God not just the foundation. Make God the center of our home, not a weekend guest. Deuteronomy chapter 6, 6 to 7, God instructs, these commandments that I give you today ought to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Center. Every discussion, there is this God element that comes within our family. Friends, worship is more than Sunday morning. Our Pastor Abby, all the week, every week, he makes sure that we are actually led into heaven. And that's beautiful. It's a lifestyle, a rhythm of acknowledging God in our own homes. Family worship doesn't have to be all the time a long worship service in our home. It can be a moment of a scripture reading, a worship song before dinner, or even praying together before God, or even discussing what God did through a rough day. All of these dots that we put together in our home at various instances will tell the generations to come that God is honored and is at the center of everything that happens in our life. Why is it important? Because shared worship fosters shared values. Our children will get to know that we trust in a God, and this God is interested in the well-being of our family. Hey, God is not a God who is so distant that he cannot come close. Our God is very real. That's the beauty of our God. Yes, he's the creator of the whole universe, yet he knows my name. Yet he knows the exact need that this Renny has. That's the beauty of our God, isn't it? He is not somebody who's washed his hands away and said, oh, you're like a clock now. 1 o'clock will come, 2 o'clock will come, 3 o'clock will come. I am not interested in you. No. We serve a God who is interested in the day-to-day activities of our life. And when our children, when generations to come, when they see that as parents, as mothers, as fathers, we are interested to bring God as the center of our life, what happens? Our children grow up knowing fully well that there is a God in the midst of us. When families worship together, they are spiritually bound together. This strengthens emotional closeness and builds lasting trust with each other. One of the major ways by which we choose that closeness to come into our life. Thirdly, invest time, not just money. Our presence matters more than possessions and the presence and the gifts that we give. Friends, one of the major common contributor to family distance is the lack of intentional time. Let me say that again. major contributor in today's society is the lack of intentional time. In a fast-paced work that we live in, productivity-driven culture, it's easy to substitute financial provision for relational investment. Money will bring comfort, but it cannot replace connection. Intentional time is very, very important. Children, your spouse, your relatives might appreciate the gifts that you give, but they deeply long for your presence. Eye contact, listening ears, laughter, quality time, all of these makes those connections so live that they enjoy. When you go back after a visit, they are not looking at most of the time what gifts you gave. They are looking at how you traveled and came and gave your time, considering that the other person with whom they built relationship with. Jesus was always present with people. Busy man, busy ministry schedule. Yet he gave time for that Samaritan woman, for that Zacchaeus, for the disciples, for the sick, the forgotten. He made sure his ministry was personal and relational. The same way we must choose to invest in one another. This might mean putting down your phones. This might mean saying no to one more meeting that you have to attend to, or planning a weekly family dinner with no distractions. One dad told me that he once spent all Saturday building a massive Lego mansion with a 5-year-old. We know what is a Lego mansion, right? When they finished, he expected a reaction like, "Wow, Dad, you are the best." Instead, the kid just smiled and said, "Let's knock it down and build something new." The dad realized it wasn't about the Lego house. It was about the time together. Presence matters more than the gifts that we give. We can give expensive gifts, maybe vacations or fancy outings, but what matters is the intentional, consistent presence. Relationships grow where time is planted. Fourthly, speak life, not death. Let your words heal and lift. Proverbs 18:21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who live in it will eat its fruit." Words have power. They can harm people. They can bring healing into people. They can build people. They can also tear down relationships. In close relationships, especially within families, our words carry extra weight. Children, for example, often remember a harsh word spoken in anger than a long compliment that you have forgotten to give them. Speaking life means choosing encouragement over criticism, blessing over blame, patience over pressure. It doesn't mean avoiding hard truths. It means speaking those things in love. Ephesians says that. It means using our voices to affirm identity, call out potential, and speak out God's promises over your loved ones. Friends, when family members feel safe and seen through kind and affirming speech, they obviously come closer. Beautiful words spoken, when you speak life-giving words, they are attracted to each other. Your respect replaces fear and joy replaces tension. A grown man once said, "My whole life changed when my dad said, 'I am proud of you.'" Simple words, but they unlocked decades of hidden insecurity. My whole life changed when my dad said, "I am proud of you." Family members should be each other's loudest cheerleaders, not harshest critics. My fifth point and my final point. Model grace and repentance. Show how love covers even the deepest falls of life. Friends, every family experiences failure. Parents lose patience. Siblings does fight. Spouses can misunderstand. The key to closeness is not perfection. It's repentance and grace. Romans chapter 3 verse 23. All have sinned and have fallen short of the glory of God. Not just my spouse has sinned and have fallen short of the glory of God. All of us have sinned. None of us is perfect. And we need to understand that. God does not cast us away. He cares for us. He gives us grace and He invites repentance in all of our lives. Families must mirror that same grace-filled pattern. Forgive as God forgave. And say, I'm sorry when we fall short. One of the most powerful thing a parent can do to the children is admit if they are wrong. And tell your children, forgive me for what I did for you. This doesn't weaken respect. It builds it. It teaches our children that repentance is not a shameful thing, but it will free them. It also makes room for others to admit mistakes without fear. A teenage daughter and mother was talking to each other. One mother told her teenage daughter, I'm sorry for pressurizing you so much about your grades. No matter what, I will continue to love you. The daughter cried and said, Mom, that's all I ever needed to hear from your mouth. Friends, apology opened a new chapter in their relationship. Modeling grace means responding to others' faults with compassion. Not excusing wrong things, but responding it with mercy. It means remembering that your goal and my goal is restoration, not a punishment within our own family. When grace is a family value, love deepens. The distance that has been created can slowly be brought into the closeness that the Lord expects in all of our lives. So finally, as I conclude, remember, family is not automatic. Closeness in family is also not automatic. It is like cultivating a garden. How many of us have a garden? How many of us have at least one or two trees in our own neighborhood or in our house? Is it easy to cultivate that? You have to constantly give attention and cultivate it like a garden. Constant nurturing is essential to manage the trees with time, with care, with patience, and God's help. These 5 principles are not a checklist, friends, but it's a way of life. And it's important that we understand that. Remember, every family will have cracks. Every family will also face storms. Every City Harvest family in the hands of Jesus can also be redeemed. Because He is not just the maker of families. He is also the restorer of families. And when we allow God to walk in our own life and to work in our own life, when we allow God to be the center portion of our life, and we allow God to be radiating through and in and through our life, remember, God is still waiting to write your family story and my family story. And like Joshua said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that's the ultimate point of our life. So from distance to closeness, we drift like ships in silent seas, each busy with our own routines, yet hearts still yearn for warmth, for touch. Your closeness time neglects too much. But there's a rock on which to stand, a steady, sure, unshaken land. When Christ is the center, storms may roar, yet love will anchor evermore. Let worship fill the home with grace, not just in chairs, but every place. A whispered prayer, a song at night, will draw our hearts towards heaven's light. Don't trade your time for things that fade. A child needs more toys you have made, more than toys that you have made. Invest in hours, not just pay. Be present now, don't just delay. Let every word be clothed in gold. Speak life where silence once took hold. A gentle tongue revives the soul. It binds the cracks. It makes us whole. And when we fail, as all hearts do, let grace and mercy carry us through. Repent, forgive, begin again. For love will always rise and love will always be mended. So come, rebuild the bonds once strained. Let's close in on the distance pain has gained. For families, by God's design, can heal, can grow, can realign.